In this Mortal Shell guide, I'll be providing you with some information that all Mortal Shell players can benefit from knowing to get off to the best possible start. There are some spoilers in this guide, mostly the locations of each shell and weapon, so please be aware of that before continuing. However, there is nothing story or boss related, so you do not need to worry about that. The first thing to understand about Mortal Shell is that there are no real stats beyond your stamina, health, and resolve. How much damage you deal is entirely based around the weapon you are using, how much it's been upgraded, and if your shell provides any passive benefits to damage or not. This means the biggest choices you will make are what shell to use and what weapon to use. I've created in-depth guides for each of the 4 shells in Mortal Shell, so if you're looking for more information about how to use each effectively, I suggest you check out those, but for those who just want the quick and dirty, watch on to learn more. Haros the Vassal is the first shell you'll find in Mortal Shell, laying to the left at the fork that is just after the long tunnel you come out of. Haros is, in my opinion, the best overall shell in the game, and it's one that I can recommend wholeheartedly to any player, whether they are new to Souls-like games or diehard veterans. When combined with the Hallowed Sword, he is a force to be reckoned with, particularly after he's gained a couple of his outstanding skills and the mechanical spike. Solomon the Scholar is the second shell you'll find in Mortal Shell, resting behind the first Grisha you will encounter and through the tunnel. Solomon is a very good choice for new players and veterans alike. He has high resolve, allowing him to use tons of weapon abilities when they are needed most against hard-to-kill enemies, which really helps out newbies. On the other hand, he is rewarded for parrying, helping out veterans who enjoy this aspect of gameplay. Teal the Acolyte is likely the third shell you'll find in Mortal Shell, and if you've played the beta already, then you'll be somewhat familiar with the area he is located. However, he is not in the exact same place he was. Teal is now located in the cave where you fight Ven Noctivagu, which is in Falgrim outskirts. Teal is an excellent shell for confident players that have a strong sense of the game's mechanics and feel like combat is too slow for them. By having such a large stamina pool, these players will be able to pull off more attacks and dodges, speeding up combat and allowing them to play to their aggressive nature. However, I don't recommend this shell to new players because the health pool doesn't afford many mistakes before death, and you are sure to make plenty when first learning the game. Eredrim the Venerable is likely the last shell you will find in Mortal Shell, and he can be found laying outside the Eternal Narthex, which is just past Falgrim outskirts. Eredrim is not a bad choice for new players or veterans, but his damage abilities get less and less effective as you progress the game and you upgrade your weapon more and more. For this reason, I'd highly advise that you don't use him in NG Plus and onward, but rather use him to learn mechanics of bosses or mini-bosses that hit hard. His huge health pool will allow you to take hits and stay in the fight long enough to learn what their attacks are. Much like shells, there are 4 weapons in Mortal Shell to choose from. Their movesets are varied, as is their damage, and which you choose depends a bit on which shell you chose. Let's take a look at these weapons and discuss what they are good at and who might use them. The Hallowed Sword is your default weapon, and as it happens is arguably the best all-around weapon in Mortal Shell. And not only deals decent damage for an average stamina cost per swing, but it also builds resolve fairly quickly and has one of the best weapon abilities in the mechanical spike. I recommend this weapon to any player, particularly those who use shells with low stamina like Solomon or Eredrim. The Martyr's Blade can be found inside the Abandoned Chamber, which is the cavernous area that was in the beta. This weapon does very good damage per swing and can one-shot some enemies once fully upgraded with its running attack. It requires a ton of stamina to do multiple attacks, which thankfully are not always required, but is best suited to those shells that have higher stamina like Teal and Haros. The Smoldering Mace can be found at the entrance of the temple grounds. It is best suited to deal with multiple enemies at a time due to its wide swings, which can hit several targets at once. It requires a decent amount of stamina to use and is easier to use with Teal and Haros, but can be used effectively by Solomon and Eredrim as well. If you like taking on many enemies at a time, this is the weapon for you. The Hammer and Chisel can be found at the entrance of the Eternal Narthex, past where you found Eredrim. It boasts the highest attack speed of any weapon in Mortal Shell, is great for those that like to put pressure on their enemies, and can often keep its target chain staggered if you have enough stamina to keep swinging. This weapon is best suited for Teal and Haros because of their higher stamina pools, but Eredrim can also make good use of it since he can deal increased damage with every hit. In this section, I'll cover helpful tips that will also assist you in getting off to a good start in Mortal Shell. These will range from healing items to upgrades, as well as where you should be headed if you're lost. Let's get started. One thing you'll realize immediately upon starting Mortal Shell is that there are no Estus flasks or healing items that replenish when you die, but instead you'll have to farm them. Wilt cap mushrooms will respawn over time, so you can keep picking them up over and over again. Remember where they are located and check them every time you're in their area, so you have plenty to use. If you're still short on healing, you can purchase roasted rats from Vlast for 100 tar each, which is not much. Once you gain the Tarnished Seal from Falgrim Keep, you can parry enemies. Parrying enemies allows you to heal if you have at least 1 bar of resolve, which can come in handy if you're low on healing items, or if you have an overabundance of resolve. Use your parry on slow swinging attacks that are easy to read for guaranteed healing when you need it, because you can only hold so much resolve at once. Be sure to grab the mechanical spike as early as you can. This is located in a chest guarded by a Grecian not far from the door to Falgrim Keep. It can be a bit of a challenge, but will allow you to use Resolve to do a devastating attack with the Hallowed Sword. This is extremely useful throughout the beginning portion of the game while you sort out which weapon you'd like to use, and later in the game if you decide to use the Hallowed Sword as your weapon. Once you've figured out which weapon you like, upgrade it with Quenching Acid to +5 as quickly as you can. This will ensure that you do maximum damage and can really help you overcome much of the game's difficulty. You can purchase 2 from Vlas, you can find another in Falgrim just before the Burning Grisha, you can find one in the same place as the Beta in the Abandoned Chamber, you can find one in the Temple Grounds inside an Iron Maiden, and one in the Monument of Ash inside an Iron Maiden as well. These are not all that you can find, but this is the quickest way to get to +5. All these can be obtained before defeating a single boss. Once you've determined which shell you like best, it's best to unlock all the skills of that shell, because once you do, Sester Ganessa will become a vendor that sells powerful items. One of these items is the Ornate Mask, which allows you to fast travel. You gain glimpses only on the shell that you are using, so save your consumable glimpses for the shell that you prefer and be sure to consume them while inside that shell. Additionally, once you've maxed out a shell, consider swapping shells to use extra glimpses on their skills, or save them and use them at Sester Ganessa to purchase things, as these cost glimpses to acquire. Lastly, if you're not sure where to go, I recommend clearing the Falgrim area before heading to the Temple Grounds, which is the area behind the Flaming Grisha, and up the steps there. If you've completed this area, then you should head to the Abandoned Chamber and clear the area and areas after that. Then after that, you'll want to head to the Eternal Narthex, which is by far the most challenging area of the game. You can do things in a different order, but this is the easiest route through the game. If you like this video, be sure to check out our other guides on the 4 shells as well as our boss guides. And if you need help figuring out something else like the location of certain items, be sure to stop by the official wiki and get the help you need.